Hi, this is Amber Parrott with Morgan James Publishing, and today I have the extreme privilege of connecting with Lee Baucom and Bethany Marshall, the creators of the Jiu Jitsu Training Journal. Lee and Bethany, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us. Yes, this is so fun.
Yeah, I'm excited. So, I want to dive in and ask a couple of questions about the journal. So, first and foremost, can you tell me why you created this journal?
Bethany, why don't you start since this was your brainstorm, and then I'll talk about how I got into it.
Yeah, so I kind of have, I've been training, I did a lot of no-gi grappling, so it's very similar to jiu-jitsu. I've just have been training that for a long time. And sometimes I feel like when I'm learning, I just do better if I take notes or if I write about what I'm trying to learn. I learn better that way. It just helps things stay implanted in my memory better. And so I had this idea of kind of blending two big passions of mine, which is like grappling, jujitsu, and publishing, and wanted to put together this journal, mostly as a resource for my own learning. I just thought it'd be a great tool to have. In my back pocket to just help me in my learning and in my training. And then I happen to be connecting with Lee, who I know from the book world, who also trains jujitsu, and was just sharing this idea with him. And I wanted to put this together, but I felt I was kind of it was just like in my head. I couldn't ever actually make progress on it. And so when I shared the idea with him, I asked him to come on board and do this with me because I really needed someone else to actually help take this from an idea in my head and kind of validate the idea, as a fellow practitioner and someone who understands books.
Very cool, very cool. And viewers at home, you might not know this, but Bethany is actually the publishing director at Morgan James Publishing. So that background with books is definitely present. And Lee actually has a couple of books with us as well. So, Lee, do you want to talk a little bit more about how you got plugged into this project?
Yeah, so that you already know a little bit of that, how I got directly in. But background, I've always had an interest in martial arts. I did Taekwondo when I was a teenager, and then life got in the way. I went off to college, stopped practicing, and then life continued to be in the way. And so finally, several years ago, I said, okay, now it's the time. I was, let's say 51 at the time. And I'm like, okay, it's, now or never. So let's jump in. And so I chose jujitsu, and I'd already had some conversations with Bethany from Morgan James Connection about her time with mixed martial arts, and that includes a lot of jujitsu. So we had that conversation. I remember I sat down with her sometime after we were at a Morgan James event, and I said, "Oh, by the way, I started jujitsu," and we started having this conversation about the process of learning grappling and
Mm.
all the different pieces of that. And so then I kept updating her, when we would get back together at the next event, let me tell you what's going on. And what I realized in that process is we were talking about this philosophy behind jujitsu. It just wasn't talking about the lumps and bruises that I was getting along the way, but we were, nor just swapping war stories, but we're talking about what the philosophy is. So at some point, Bethany kind of talked about the fact that she'd had this hope of doing something about creating this training journal. And so they always say, you ought to write the book that you need and that you can't find. And so I was sitting there going, it's been a real pain to keep up with. And there are people who've tried to take notes. And I would watch people try to take notes in class. I even tried. And to be honest, it wouldn't work. I would take a note and I'm like, I don't even know what to put in here. And so as Bethany was talking about this idea, I was like, that's exactly what I wish I had had when I had started. And I had stumbled on through the process trying to learn the best I could. But this would have made it a whole lot easier. And so I got on board because I really like Morgan James. B, I had a connection with Bethany. C, I felt like this was a real need that I could identify. And I guess D, it was a fun project outside of the normal stuff I have in my life. So it was a nice diversion of some sort, but still at the same time has this element of what I've been about all my life, which is how do you learn? How do you learn better? How do you kind of thrive in life? So that was what drew me in.
Yeah, I was about to say it's such a clear extension of both of your interests and passions to help people, and then also the practical elements of jujitsu. So that's awesome. So tell me a little bit more about how this journal should be used.
Yeah, so we've designed it so that it can walk you through the learning process. The thing about jujitsu, as opposed, if you take like another martial art or boxing, what do you have to do? Strike harder, guard better, block better. And so because I took Taekwondo, it was like, do I want to be better? Okay, hit harder, kick harder, block better, done. And so there are some other techniques, but really those were the kind of the essence of it. Jiu-jitsu, however, is more like chess.
Mm.
And so the specifics are very small. A little detail would make the difference between a move working well and you struggling through the move. And I remember along the way, as I was learning, I could tell when I was beginning to really get into the move because it became effortless. And that's the thing about jujitsu, it's immediate feedback. If you're using your muscle, you're probably not doing it right. And because there are all these little details, we were trying to figure out a way that you could keep track of that. And that's what the journal is about. So the journal allows you to sit in class and take notes on what the instructor is saying. It even tells you where to highlight it. We have a way that you can mark down where it comes from. There are different positions in jujitsu. And so we have a place that you can mark what position. Also, it's whether you're, kind of defending or on the offense when you're using this particular technique. So you end up creating your own index of your moves, and all the details are listed. And then we have another place to really be able to think about, where do you want to improve? Where are you stuck? What's the struggle? What did you learn? And so that really, if you boil it down, the whole process of the journal is, what am I learning in this process that I want to be able to take the next time? When I started, there's this core group of techniques that you really want to master. And when I started, I would learn a technique, then it would take a while to come back to that technique, and we would do it again. I'm like, oh, I kind of remember this, but I had no way of kind of keeping it filed in my brain. If I
Sure.
had the journal, right, you go back and go, oh, that was it. So that's how it's designed, so that somebody can take it from day one and begin. And I wish I had a day one, and record the techniques as they go and what they're learning and why they would use that technique, and where they want to continue thinking about it.
Yeah, wow. It sounds like, even just from the description that you've given, that it's a very helpful tool. But I love it if you guys could share a little bit more on how this journal is going to help with those practicing jujitsu.
Bethany, you want to take it?
Sure. So, I mean, Lee kind of broke down a little bit about how like the journal includes, specific spaces for, taking notation of important critical details or things that, you really want to keep in mind as you reflect on what you learned in class. But at the beginning, we also wanted to just like include a few best practices that we've seen prove helpful in our own journeys. I think the one thing that really is important to Lee and I both is that it's known that we're not specifically jiu-jitsu experts. We're not coaches. That's not our area of expertise to be like teaching this sport. But we do really love learning this sport and just like learning and life in general. And so the beginning of it just like includes some best practices. For me, I think it's really important that people feel like this sport is open for them. It's such an amazing sport. There's so many benefits to this sport and how it can improve and impact your lifestyle and just your life, and like so many areas of your life can be improved from this sport. And for people to feel confident or comfortable walking into a gym environment is really important to me, and especially for women that might be interested in this sport. This sport, I think, has so many benefits to so many people, but like women in particular, like I feel that it's just really important that you understand that this sport can be for you too. Like if this is interesting to you, like there is a gym out there that is your gym, and we just want to equip you with some best practices that you can apply to any gym. So this is not affiliated, this journal is not affiliated with any particular gym or team, but there are some best practices at the beginning that can help you be ready to enter any environment. So we try to make it as universal as possible with some of those best practices and things that you should keep in mind as you head into this sport, and just some ways to like keep in the sport for a long time, and making sure that like you are taking the right mentality into practice, and just things that like, again, we've learned from our own experience, but want to make sure that other people have at their fingertips as well. So my hope for this is that it really provides a place for people to improve their personal jiu-jitsu game, but then just like the sport as a whole, like just seeing opportunities for it to elevate, especially, you know, in recent times, we've seen, you know, this moment where people were able to, you know, we had to stop training, and gyms have had to find new ways of navigating, you know, these recent issues with the pandemic, and I think there are some interesting ways that people can still continue to learn in their jiu-jitsu journey, even without being on the mats, which can be like super frustrating because, you know, it's hard not to be on the mats. But yeah, so just I would say, you know, making the like maybe that emotional or mental barrier to entry to the sport a little bit easier to cross, and then actually, you know, hopefully helping people really elevate their game by, you know, taking a more strategic approach to their learning, and not just kind of showing up to class and trying to remember what you can remember.
Right, right. It sounds like the journal gives you an opportunity to kind of break down what you're learning to make everything a little more accessible, stick a little bit longer. So I can totally see how that would be really, really helpful for your practice. Awesome.
There's this place where I mean, have a lot of empathy for someone who's just coming into a class
Sure.
because I'm not that far removed. And a lot of times by the time you're an instructor, you know, you have been doing jujitsu for perhaps a decade or longer. And sometimes that, that knowledge becomes very implicit. You just assume it. And I didn't, because I was so fresh. And so for a long time, I was walking up when people would come in to look, and I was sitting down going, let me kind of help you understand what's going on the mats a little bit, because you walk it, as my wife said, she came to watch, and she said, it looks like a bunch of panda bears rolling around on the ground. I can't make sense of this, you know? And so I said, okay, but if you watch it long enough, you can begin to discern it. And so I remember when I walked in, I'm watching this and I'm going, there's no way. I can't do that. And I don't even know what they're doing. I don't even know if that's a move or they're just flipping over. And so after a while, though, you're going, oh, that's that move. Oh, and that's how it links to this. And so part of the process of learning is figuring out those linkages.
Sure.
And there's such a amount of implicit knowledge in a lot of places. I showed it to an instructor in the front section. He was read through it and said, you know, we kind of teach it, but we're probably not saying it out
Sure.
loud. You know, it's so you have to osmotically absorb it. And so we basically try to take all of that kind of implicit stuff, make it explicit in both how you could learn in the process, learning a move, but also learning kind of the background, what's in a gym, what's a gym about, how do you, as Bethany said, roll for a while. I mean, I started when I was over 50. So, you know, I wanted to do it as safely as possible. And yet at the same time, to not be holding back. And so
Yeah.
to find that edge is an important part that we've tried to put into the whole journal.
Yeah, that's excellent. Thank you so much. And thank you for being here today and sharing more information about the journal. Before we close, I want to ask if viewers at home, you've piqued their interest, they want to learn about more about you and the journal, where can they connect with you?
Yes, if you go to jiu-jitsu-training-journal.com or you can find me on Instagram, just at Bethany Marshall.
And I'm all over the internet, so you can always do a search for me. But that's less important than the journal. And so one of the things that we've designed in this journal, real quickly, is if somebody's watching and they are kind of in the leadership of a gym, we've also designed it so that that gym can get the journal and personalize it
Yeah.
for their students. And so while it's available in bookstores and wherever you like to buy your books, also contact us if you're interested in getting that for your gym so that you have something to hand your student and help them out from the very beginning.
Yeah, that sounds like an excellent tool for instructors to hand over to their students. So, what a great idea. Well, thank you guys again for joining me today. And thank you, viewers at home. Be sure to grab a copy of the Jiu Jitsu Training Journal wherever books are sold. Congratulations on the release of your book.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amber.